if you feel like we've learned a lot this year and your like brain is tired. Yeah, okay, I'm feeling it too. The first step that I always take is I go back to the standards that DESE puts out. So I always look and see that I'm on target with what I'm supposed to be teaching. And typically what I do is I actually look back at the grade level before me, and sometimes even 2 grade levels before, just to see what keywords and terms that students are familiar with, what concepts they've already been working on. And from there, that's where I start writing out the learning targets. Typically, I try to pull in a few terms that they're already familiar with, and then from there, I build on to introduce the new concepts. Before I totally introduce your project, I want us to look at our learning target. So, our first learning target that we're going to be talking about is I can identify the title, author, and setting of a story. Who can break that down for me? What does that mean? Once I've written out those learning targets, we talk about those as a class, and we like to discuss what each keyword means. And that gives me the chance to make sure that, number 1, they're being introduced to that new vocabulary. Number 2, they understand what the vocabulary means, and just giving them that ownership of being able to talk with their peers using those words, using that terminology, and just understanding there's no misconceptions. I think as we learn, as we do the activities, as I'm monitoring students, if I ask them to do a task related to the learning target, if they slip up, if they mention something that's not quite on task, that gives me the opportunity as an educator to refer them back to the learning target and then clear up any of those misconceptions that they have, whether that's on an individual basis or as a whole group. The second learning target that we're going to talk about is I can summarize a story's events. Who can tell me what that means? What are we doing if we're summarizing? Go for it.
Like, kind of like explain about it, kind of like break it up into pieces some and like explain it.
Yeah, so I'm explaining the story. I'm telling you about the important things that happen as the author tells the story. Now, here's my question. We've talked to them about sequencing, which is whenever we put the events in order. Do you think for me to write a good summary, I have to sequence the story's events?
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine if I didn't sequence the events of the story. What do you think would happen? It really came down to routine. For me, what that looks like is we begin every day by rereading the learning targets together, whether I read out loud and then they repeat it after me, whether I have a student read it out loud and then I break it down. But there's always opportunity for interaction with it from the very beginning of our class period. And then from there, that leads into the discussion about breaking down the learning target, clearing up any misconceptions. And that's a daily process because as students learn, you have some high kids that might get it the first day and then you have some low kids that might not get it till day 3. And so I ensure that there's time and opportunity for that every single day. So no matter what happens during the class period, I know that we've talked about the learning target and they know what they're supposed to do. And then as we go through the lesson, we use a rating scale where I've taught students that they can rate themselves on a level from 1 to 4, and they use that to assess themselves and interact with that. We do turn-in talks. Sometimes I will individually address students and ask them to rate themselves. I'll show them examples of work that they can tell me what they would rate it. But all of these things are just more opportunities for us to interact with the learning target and make sure that students are on track with what they're supposed to know. We do go over strong week work a lot. And so whether that's I find a student who is really on track with the learning target and I make a fuss about it in class and I put their work on the board, or, I brag on that student and we as a class discuss what they're doing well. We do that often. Sometimes I'll intentionally make a mistake and say, oh guys, what do I need to do? Here's my learning target. How do I get back? And so showing that week work. As of right now, I do a lot of rubrics for summative projects and assignments. And so, anytime students are working on a project where they're being asked to create something or to demonstrate the learning target, that's where I will take the time ahead of time to come up with a rubric, or there are times that I have students help me build the rubric based on the strong week work examples that I provide them with. Oh, well, what was wrong about it? What did I not do?
The spelling.
So the spelling was wrong? What else did I not do? Go for it.
Capitals.
I didn't capitalize the words. So I made mistakes and then I ended up just scratching it out and rewriting it. Is the title and the author, what would you rate this? Did I identify it?
A 1.
Okay, why would you rate it a 2? I think it helps them to take more ownership if they can have a say in, well, this is strong work and this is why. Granted, with that being said, as the educator, obviously I need to know going in what the learning target is and what the standard says that their depth of knowledge needs to be. And so I can guide those conversations to ensure that we're still meeting all the criteria that we need to. But as often as I'm able to give students a voice in the classroom and able to give them that chance to have a say in what they think should meet the standard of success, I try to give that to them as much as possible. Now, next learning target is I can summarize a story's events. So this section right here is my summary. Let me read it to you. What do you guys think? What would you rate that as a summary? Go ahead and show me on your fingers. Why would you rate it a 3? What can I do differently to make it better? So maybe add a bit of specific details, maybe tell which middle school he goes to, or maybe I could list the name of some of his friends. I really do see a difference in student engagement. I think the more that students know what they're supposed to be doing, the more they want to contribute to that. I know for me as an adult, I don't like walking into situations where I don't know what's happening. That just makes me anxious. It makes me uncomfortable. And I think the same mentality goes for our students. And so the more that they interact with those learning targets, the more that we give them the power to assess themselves, to have conversations about their growth, about their progress, or where they're struggling, I think that makes them perk up and pay attention a little bit more, because there are times that I'm teaching and, you know, maybe I'm having an off day and I'm not referencing the learning targets as much as I'd like to. I'll have students that raise their hand and say, oh, Miss Robinson, you said earlier this week that this learning target was this. Is this what we're doing? And I just, you know, I see that they are more engaged. They want to pay more attention because they know what's expected of them and they want to meet that expectation. Is that a good summary of the book?
No, because it's going straight from school to...
Yeah, it's jumping all over the place. Am I telling you about the story overall, or am I just picking random things?
Yeah, you're picking random things.
Yeah. Okay, so when I write a summary, I need to give a clear overview of the book. I have seen data where they do not grow and progress as much toward their learning target on weeks that I do not do that. And then there are times where I'm on top of my game, I'm referencing the learning target, I provide them with those opportunities, and their pre-test, post-test results are completely 180. And so for me, what that tells me is that, you know, the more that they know what they're supposed to do, as long as we're providing them with the resources and the materials they need to get there, they will be successful. And I think, you know, as long as we show them what is expected, they're going to rise to that standard. And I've just seen how much more confident my students have become throughout the school year. And I see that the more that they interact with their learning targets, the more that they know what they're supposed to do, the better they do throughout. I've seen already the benefits of simply utilizing the learning targets, of having those good conversations with students. And so I think, again, the more that I can provide them with criteria for success and the more that they can see how easily achievable it is, the better they will do in all of their work. So I'm excited to see where they go as an educator, get better at putting that into their hands. There's a lot of different routes that you could take whenever you're trying to start implementing DACL. And the biggest advice that I could give is to start small and do what you can do and build from there. Some advice that I got my first year of teaching that will stick with me forever is don't add anything new until you do what you're doing well. And so for me, what that took was, as I mentioned before, establishing a routine to reference the learning targets. And so, you know, start small and learn to do that really well. And once you have that down and you're proficient with that, you're seeing changes in your students because of that as a result of it, then I think, you know, you can start to look bigger and broader. But don't overwhelm yourself with trying to do everything perfectly at once. I think if you start small and do one thing really well, you will see growth, and that's ultimately the goal. We're all here to see our students be successful and to grow and improve. And so whatever you can do as the educator to make that happen, even if it's a small step, if it's a step in the right direction, take it.